This conference will now be recorded.
All right, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. Welcome to our fourth session on the Earth Observations for Tuna Fisheries Management Workshop Series. My name is Leah Mupasigi, and I am a Policy Fellow with GeoBlue Planet. I am joined by Dr. Emily Smale, who is the Executive Director of Blue Planet, as well as our panelists today. So, as I said, this is the fourth session, and today we are covering Earth observation data for detection and monitoring of vessel activities to reduce illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. I'm joined by Dr. Kwame Agyekum from University of Ghana, Richard Proud from exactEarth, and Dr. Isa Elegbede from the Brandenburg University of Technology. So if this is your first time or your fourth time joining, this is a 5-part series. And if you'd like to see the recordings from our first 3 sessions or sign up for our last one, please visit our website. It's geoblueplanet.org/EO4Tuna. So now I am going to switch over presentation to our first speaker, and that's Dr. Kwame Agyekum. I will make you a presenter. So Kwame is a lecturer and a marine remote sensing scientist at the University of Ghana and the co-chair of the GeoBlue Planet. Kwame has keen interest in using marine Earth observation data for fisheries management, as well as in maritime security and safety. His work at the University of Ghana largely focuses on developing coastal and marine services to curb IUU fishing. Kwame, welcome.
Thank you very much. I hope I can get loud and clear. Well, hello everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Kwame. I don't really. I'm going to talk to you guys about protecting fishery resources using space-bound sensors. So my presentation will cover how it's important to make measurements of the ocean or generate data from models that we can use in IUU monitoring or identifying the grounds. We'll also look at how AIS can be used in identifying infractions at sea and gathering information that is very useful for management, and how you can also use AIS, optical signage, to detect infractions at sea. We all know that the major threat that us our ocean and its resources are threats, largely from overfishing and sometimes pollution. There is also the effect of global climate change. That is not really within our control. Yes and no. Sometimes, depending on what we do, how much CO2 emissions that we tend to exacerbate climate change. At the end of the day, hello?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes, I wonder if you might want to try switching your video off to give more bandwidth for your audio. Everyone is having trouble hearing you.
Okay, am I loud and clear now?
Yes.
That's better.
And I might suggest using the airbag, Kwame. That way you.
Say it again?
Yeah, your airbag or bugs or headset. That way you don't go back and forth from your computer.
Okay, give me a second. Hello, am I loud and clear now?
Can you speak
Hello?
a little closer to your microphone?
Hello, can you hear me now?
Perfect.
Okay. So I had indicated earlier, so the resources we have in the ocean are under threat, either from overfishing or pollution. So it's affecting the opportunities that we can derive from the ocean, and hence there's the need that we start looking at cost-effective measures that can help us tackle these challenges. So the issue is also not just about reduction in fish size and catch. For instance, in the Gulf of Guinea region, there has been increasing threats to fishermen and their lives by pirates. So most of the pirate activities that tend to happen in the region are now focusing on fishing vessels, canoes, and so forth. In the past, the targets were large commercial fleets, oil tanks, and all of that. But now, pirates are constantly attacking these vessels, largely because they don't speed much when they are engaged in fishing, so they become very, very vulnerable. So obviously, if fishermen are under threat and they can't go out to sea, then we would then lose food, and the revenue that we generate from fish will not be available for development. So it's important that we start looking at ways that we can safeguard the resources and the life at sea. For us to be able to do this effectively, one, we need to understand the processes and drivers of the ocean and the resources in there. So as scientists, we would look at how warm the ocean is, where the currents are, and so forth. We also have to intensify strategies that will help us to protect marine living resources, infrastructure, and human life at sea. Then we also have to have proper policies and government regimes that are driven by science or scientific information, so that we have a better understanding of what are the issues and how do we build and implement strategies that can help us protect the resources. And how do we do this? I mean, we need to have an extra eye at sea. The ocean is so vast, such that it becomes so difficult to look at everything that happens within your territorial waters. But satellites allow us to see the vastness of the ocean. We can go beyond the coastal area, move into oceanic regions, and look at what happens out there. So, thanks to satellites, we will be able to know what fishermen do, where they go, and so forth. We can understand the biological, physical, and chemical interactions that drive fishes and other resources. We will be able to understand where the currents are moving from, where the nutrients are coming from, at what levels are they coming, where are the larvae concentrated, so we can effectively police and ensure that the resources will be available for the next generation. So for us to do this effectively, there are two main satellites or sources of information we look at. We can look at vessel traffic, and we can look at the ocean, but in terms of the processes that drive fish distribution, or use images that can help us detect activities at sea. So on this slide, you can see tracks of vessels moving within the West African region. These were derived from vessel traffic or AIS data. On the right, you can see different shades of colors. It tends to show us where the currents are moving, how warm or cold these currents are. And by putting all of this together, we can be able to model and predict productive areas. So one way to do this, to identify the most productive areas, is to know where fishes are caught. We can derive this from logbooks, right? But over the years, we have come to realize that sometimes the records or the data we derive from these logbooks are not too accurate, largely because fishermen are not inputting the right data in there. So we can sometimes rely on vessel traffic information, and I'll show you a slide that helps us to know the productive areas. We can also merge these fish locations with environmental data. You can extract, by knowing where you have fished, you can extract the conditions there. Then that can help you model and predict areas that are productive and we call these fishing grounds. So this slide, I'm not going to go too much into that. I've shown it a couple of times. Shows us how we combine vessel traffic information, surface data from models or from satellites to generate potential fishing zone maps. In our region, we use this a lot. We do not share this with fishermen. We only make this available to people involved in monitoring control and surveillance so that it helps them to plan their monitoring activities. One sure way of also knowing what happens at sea, like I said earlier, is to use vessel traffic information. Over here, we are looking at AIS, which was initially designed for large vessels to keep or to reduce collision at sea. Richard Proud, who will be the next presenter, will talk much about this technology. AIS allows us to get navigational information, vessel information that identifies the vessel, and voyage-related information. Now, the navigation information includes the positions, time, course, or the heading of the vessel, and so forth. These information can be analyzed to understand how the vessel behaves. So, in our vessel service that we do under the Women's and Africa Project, we use AIS to detect certain infractions, IUU infractions such as transshipment. We use AIS to estimate fishing efforts, to identify fishing grounds, and so forth. So in the next few slides, I'm going to show you how these data sets can be used for IUU monitoring and to reduce these infractions at sea. So one of the tools that we generate is a fishing test map. Basically, we want to identify areas in the ocean space where vessels have fished. I need the vessel to tell you that I fished here, and like I indicated earlier, sometimes the information you get from their logbooks. Sorry, the feedback is not coming from my end. I guess someone else mic is on. Okay, so I'll continue. So we are able to look at the speed information or sometimes even the course of ground information to predict areas that the vessel may have fished. And the idea behind this is very simple. Vessels do three main things. They are either at port waiting to go to sea, they speed to fishing grounds, and at the fishing ground they slow down, right? And when they slow down, their movement becomes not it is sort of the rate of turn changes over time quickly. So by understanding this, you can easily identify which part of the ocean that fishing vessels may have fished. Now, when you're able to identify that, you can create a virtual grid, then count vessels that had shown fishing behavior within this grid. Then you'll be able to map the fishing ground. So on your stream left is a chart that shows areas for a particular day where by looking at the speed information, the vessels may have fished. This is very useful for management and for planning. Again, sometimes you also want to know how many trips a vessel may have done, because it's a good indicator for fishing efforts. To be able to do this, you must know your landing sites, where the vessels move to, where they stay. By knowing those areas, you can measure the distance between those points and any point beyond that area. So when the vessel moves and
it's set out to sea, you can estimate how far it goes. So by knowing how far it goes, you can then have a fair idea the start time of its journey, the end time of its journey, the duration, and the number of fishing trips it may have done. So this is one way we do that out here. So we basically we have a reference point, which is the landing site. Then we compare the distance between that point and all other points. Then we are able to generate the trips and estimate the start and end times. By doing this, we are able to generate a chart that tells us the number of trips and the duration of a particular fishing vessel. We can also even overlay the tracks on bathymetry charts to have a fair idea the depth at which these vessels operate. We can put all of that together. I mean, in terms of the duration of a fishing trip, then have a chart of how much fishing time had gone into a particular fisheries. So this chart shows a vessel that operated between April and July, and we know for each day how many vessels were out there and how long they stayed at sea. Again, you can also analyze vessel traffic information for fishing vessels to detect transshipment. Transshipment is basically when two vessels come together to transfer goods. In most cases, it's fish, and it's often not allowed because we need to do proper auditing. How much fish are you getting? So when you are able to go out there and catch and you transfer to others, sometimes they don't come to land where they are supposed to. So we have no proper way of knowing how much has been taken out, and that is not allowed. So fisheries managers need to know where these fishes are caught. Are there instances of transshipment? So to do that, we do a proximal analysis of vessels and where they had and who they had been close to, right? So in the chart below, you can see lots of blobs. Those blobs are areas where, based on the distance apart between two vessels, we think they had fished. If you look at the plot above, for example, African Sprinter and Leon M had moved together and they were close together in space and time at this point where I'm pointing my pointer. So at that point, those two vessels spent considerable amount of time very close to each other, and it seems to suggest they may have shared goods or transferred fish from one vessel to the other. If this is not allowed, when the fisheries manager sees this sort of behavior at sea, you can just fall on those two vessels and question them further to understand what they had whatever they had done at sea. In this slide, I'm showing you an example of an issue we had to deal with somewhere in, I think, 2016 or so. So the Ministry of Fisheries in Liberia called on us and indicated that a vessel that had operated in their waters were engaged in IUU fishing. So we were tasked to look at their trajectory from some period. When we started looking at that, there were a lot of things that we realized that yes, the vessel actually engaged in IUU fishing, and it wasn't just in Liberian waters. It moved to Cote d'Ivoire, it fished there, and it also even moved to Ghana, where it fished without licensing. Then it went straight to Cote d'Ivoire to discharge the fishes that it had caught. This sort of information is very, very useful in knowing what a vessel will do in pressing charges, right? So the AIS satellite images provide us a lot of advantages when it comes to monitoring of our ocean space. this will be my final slide. Here I'm showing how we can also use optical images and radar images to detect ships at sea. And on the right, it's an optical image collected from Sentinel-2 to detect ships. And on the left, it's SAR data merged with AIS. So in both cases, you know where the vessels are. On the right, where we have merged with AIS, we are able to know vessels that are reporting. So the blue crosses you see are from AIS. The red detections are from SAR. Now, when a vessel does not have an AIS position showing, obviously it seems to suggest that it's not reported its position. Any fisheries manager can then report this to the Navy or the Coast Guard, who can further go out to police and investigate what may have happened. So this will be the end of my slide. Thank you very much.
Hey, Kwame, thank you so much. It was really interesting to see that animation you shared and the information that you get not only from an individual ship, but how ships interact with each other through that transshipment. So thank you. We are going to have a discussion at the end of the presentation. So if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the chat, or we could save that till after the talks. All right. So thank you, Kwame. Next up is Richard Proud from exactEarth. Richard, I just made you a presenter.
Okay, thank you, Lane.
Yeah. So Richard Proud is the director of the Advanced Maritime Applications for exactEarth Limited and the managing director for exactEarth Europe. He has 35 years of experience working across commercial satellite Earth observation, mobile satellite communications, and GIS domains. He is originally trained in land resource management, and then he worked as a software engineer, and then he moved into project and operations management, business development, and company management. Before joining exactEarth, Richard established and ran his own geospatial application development company for 8 years. So that I'd like to welcome Richard. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Lee. Can everybody hear me okay?
Yep, I could hear you.
Good. So yeah, I'm going to give a brief introduction to some services we offer via our satellite AIS technology as relating to particularly small fishing vessels. Kwame has very kindly introduced AIS anyway, but I'll touch on that in a bit more detail in a minute. So moving on, is it moving? No. How do I? Okay, there we go. So yeah, exactEarth, I work for a commercial company called exactEarth. We're Canadian. We've been going for over 10 years now, and in partnership with L3Harris and Iridium, we operate a constellation of 58 AIS satellites, and they provide real-time access to AIS traffic from AIS-equipped vessels wherever they're operating in the world. And I'll just explain a little bit more about AIS if I can get the thing to, yeah. So AIS stands for Automatic Identification System. It was originally designed in the 1990s as a collision avoidance system for commercial shipping. And in doing so, it provides effectively real-time tracking information on a boat or a ship equipped with an AIS transceiver. It's a standard, it's an international standard. It's mandated by the IMO for all SOLAS class vessels, so any ship over 300 tons has to carry an AIS transceiver. And an AIS transceiver basically transmits and receives a set of standard messages recognized by other receivers and our satellites, etc. And those messages contain a variety of information, but most importantly, position, speed, course, and heading. And those AIS transmissions are picked up by neighboring ships that have an AIS transceiver on, and coastal AIS stations if they exist, and also our satellite system From a terrestrial AIS point of view, it's VHF radio based, so it's line of sight. And typically, a coastal AIS receiver will see a ship, say 30, 40 nautical miles out to sea. Sometimes it's further than that, but generally that's the average. From a satellite point of view, we can see a ship wherever it is. It can be close inshore, in port, or it can be out on the ocean. And there's no need for any coastal AIS infrastructure. And through that constellation that you can see in the animation, those are the 58 satellites orbiting the Earth in 6 different planes. The latency, so that's the time it takes from a message to be transmitted and to be made available to the end user, is generally less than a minute. So it really is real time. And that's true everywhere in the world. And because of the number of satellites, and the circles in that animation, by the way, are effectively the listening footprint of the AIS receiver on the satellite, there's generally a satellite or a satellite part of a satellite footprint over anywhere in the world every few minutes. So why is satellite AIS useful for fisheries, particularly small scale? I mean, Kwame very kindly touched on that in his presentation. It does provide real-time tracking information, and we get many position reports an hour, which supports legal activity and sort of back office offline fisheries management, as Kwame was showing. Because it's a standard based around safety, it does support safety out of the safety of life out of the box, as it were, both through some functionality in the AIS transceiver, which I'll come to in a little while, but also because other ships are picking up the AIS messages, and as I said, it's a collision avoidance system. And we have, through trials in West Africa, anecdotal evidence that bigger ships are now avoiding smaller ships, smaller fishing vessels, when they're equipped with an AIS device, whereas previously it was often the case that a small vessel would have to cut its nets and run, either be run over by a bulk carrier or a tanker or something. So yeah, safety is a key thing. It's generally very cost effective, particularly when compared to a VMS system that you might find on a commercial trawler. And that's because it's generally cheaper from a hardware point of view, the equipment you have to stick on the boat, and also the airtime charges. Now, one of the problems with standard AIS in terms of how it applies to small scale fishing boats is that a typical Class A or a Class B AIS transceiver is A, quite expensive, and B, requires integration with onboard systems on a ship. And it also provides, and it requires onboard power. And those are things that are not very practical, if they exist at all, on unsophisticated smaller fishing boats. So we've developed a service we call exactTrax, and we've done that in partnership with a number of AIS equipment manufacturers around the world. And it basically, exactTrax provides low-cost battery or solar-powered transponders, which can be put on any boat. I mean, it can be a canoe, pirogue, all the way up to a semi-industrial fishing vessel. And combined with that, some sophisticated signal processing technology, which is in the firmware of the transponder, which makes it much easier for us to detect these low-powered devices from space. And there are some photos on the right there of various devices on various boats in various countries around the world. And you can see that they require no connection to any system on board a ship or a boat. The one on the top right is particularly interesting, I think, at the moment. It's brand new. It's from a South African company, and you can see that the solar panel is actually integral to the device, so you don't have to put more than one thing on your boat. It weighs less than 150 grams, that particular device, and it's about the size of a large smartphone, so it doesn't get in the way, as it were. It's designed to be, exactTrax designed to be very simple end-to-end service. So in this graphic here, you have a couple of fishing boats out at sea. The AIS transmissions from their transponders are picked up, as I said, by neighboring ships, by coastal stations, and by our satellites. All of that data comes into our data center, and then we can make it available to end users in a variety of ways. We have a smartphone app called Trax. We can deliver the data as a digital stream into existing third-party systems. We have a sophisticated data display tool called ShipView. And from a safety point of view, all of these exactTrax transponders have an alert button on. And when it's activated, if the crew gets into trouble, then the device does two things. One, it sends a standard AIS safety message, which is then picked up by neighboring ships and coastal stations. But it also sends a special exactTrax alert message for us to detect by satellite. And when we detect one of those, the system automatically starts sending out SMS texts and emails to previously registered users. We can also get diagnostics information back from the devices to show how they're being used. So where have we deployed this so far? Kwame knows a lot about this. It was working in Ghana previously, but it's operational in South Africa and Tristan da Cunha on their rock lobster boats. It was operational in Ghana and Gambia, but that's in abeyance at the moment from a funding point of view. We're about to deploy 800 devices in Madagascar next year, and we've had various trials, particularly in Africa, some with World Bank funding in Sierra Leone and Liberia, and some few UK government funding in 6 or 7 different East African and West African countries. And we're just about to start a trial in the Comores in January, and we're doing something in Indonesia with a local partner there. But the trick, of course, in all of this, all the trials have been very successful, is to move a test deployment into an operational deployment. Because it's a VHF-based system, it's not a point-to-point SATCOM system like you would get with an Inmarsat terminal or Iridium. We don't guarantee to detect every single message that an exactTrax device transmits, but through the combination of the number of satellites we have and the firmware in the transponders, actually we've demonstrated in various parts of the world that the detection rate is in fact very good. And as an example here from Mauritania, where we had a trial a couple of years ago, where we're getting at least 15 position reports in real time every hour on average, with an interval between them on average of just slightly under 4 minutes. So it really is real-time tracking and actually exceeds what most VMS systems mandate in terms of reporting position. Now, so exactTrax does or provides the location aspect of catch traceability, but we're now working on adding in catch reporting via the same set of components. This is brand new for us, so we've just started a small project with some Innovate UK funding called MESA, Market Evolution for Small-Scale Fisheries in Africa. And here we're working with some small fishing communities in Mauritius and in partnership with 2 South African organisations, Stone Free Communications and Abalobi. Some of you may well have heard of Abalobi, and I'll say a bit more about them in a minute. And 2 Mauritian organisations, Social Limited, which is an M&E consultancy, and the Artisanal Fishing Federation of the Indian Ocean. And here we're really assessing the desire and the need with small fishing communities to see whether there is a role of integrating our traceability, tracking, safety of sea components into Abalobi's digital seafood marketplace platform. And some of you may well have seen this diagram. This is Abalobi's hook-to-cook concept. I'm not going to go through it all in detail, but basically it's a bespoke but repeatable value chain that they design with local communities. And it's based around empowering local fishers to get more money for their catch. And this is because of the growing interest shown by food processing companies, supermarkets, consumers, hotels, restaurants in offering sustainably, traceably caught fish, and in doing so, hopefully the fisher can command a higher price. And we're working at the beginning part of this diagram, top left there, where we're integrating exactTrax in as a traceability component, safety of life component for when the fishes are out at sea. And as I said, adding in catch reporting over the same satellite network. So VMS, lots of you will know about VMS, vessel monitoring system, often mandated by various organizations that large trawlers, commercial trawlers will have to carry a VMS. And satellite AIS and exactTrax can actually provide the basic functionality of a VMS. It doesn't do everything that some of the bigger systems do. Satellite AIS exactTrax is a receive-only system. Our satellites are receive-only, so you can't poll an exactTrax terminal. Nominally, because it's AIS-based, and AIS is a public broadcast, the positions of the fishing boats is effectively public, which is often not popular with the fishers themselves, and governments like to try and keep the data private as well. It is actually possible to configure an exactTrax device to turn off the AIS element and just have the exactTrax encoded messages detected by our satellites. But of course, when you do that, although the data becomes private and no one else can understand it, you do lose that sort of local safety of life collision avoidance aspect. And as I touched on, because it's a VHF broadcast system, we don't guarantee to detect every single message, whereas you might expect a VMS based on Inmarsat or Iridium to have a very, very high detection rate. But I would say that from, if cost is key, then a satellite AIS-based VMS is potentially much more cost-effective from a hardware point of view and an airtime point of view. The detection rates are very, very good, and I don't really think that's an issue. And an exactTrax device can be deployed on any kind of boat. As I said, even the smallest canoe, dugout, whatever, which certainly is not true of an industrial-based VMS that you'd find on a trawler. exactTrax supports safety of life, which VMS does not. And we can provide diagnostics information about the behavior of the device, which would allow the authorities to see whether a device has been turned on or off. And physically, they're very tamper-proof. To actually get inside any of those transponders, you'd have to break them. And it's also possible to fix them permanently to a boat so they can't be easily removed. So I touched on these. I'll just run through very quickly. You can access the data from an exactTrax device in many ways. ShipView is our web data viewer. You can have an NMEA data stream or pull the data over through OGC services if you've got an existing analysis system that you want to use. The SOS service does a visual alert in ShipView and comes across as text messages and emails. And we have an Android and Apple smartphone app called SmartTrax, which anybody can access. And then for those who have only unsophisticated simple phones, GSM basically without a smartphone, we have this SMS service called Trax SMS, where you can look up the latest position of a vessel just by sending a text message. So in summary, last slide, it's tried and tested service in many parts of the world. It's currently operational in Africa. As I said, its airtime certainly is very inexpensive, and there's a wide range of devices that you can select from, and it says most, in fact, all are solar powered and can be put on any boat. It is based on a standard, an international standard, so you get this safety of life aspect out of the box. We will be adding catch reporting to support catch traceability. It is real time. You'll get the data generally within a minute, and there's a whole range of services that you can use to access the data. I think that was my last slide. Yep. So thank you very much.
Great, thank you for sharing that, Richard. It's great to see this example of how Earth observations not only support safety at sea and tracks vessels, but then how that information could be used from the time a fish is caught to the time that fish is on someone's table. So thanks for that. And then we have our last presentation from Dr. Isa Elegbede, who is a doctoral researcher at the Brandenburg University of Technology in Germany. His research themes include sustainability certifications and marine resource innovations. Before his time in Germany, he worked on marine pollution and management in Nigeria and has experience teaching and working on capacity development activities in Canada. Isa has committed to knowledge dissemination in Africa as a diaspora expert under the Center for International Migration and Development. Thank you for joining, Isa.
Yeah, thank you so much, Segi. Today I will be presenting about an integrative approach to IUU using certification and Earth observation technologies. Yeah, just a brief background considering the significance of the SDG Goal 14 in ensuring development across the globe, and knowing that SDG Goal 14 is linked to all other goals. Now, going by the UN agenda of development, we could see that, for example, in 2018, there was the first International Day to fight IUU, and this is scheduled to be on every 5th of June. And in 2020, there was the mandate to at least to have sustainably manage the marine ecosystem under the target 14.2, and also to end overfishing and IUU, which I think it's yet to be actualized. That is why there is need for the decade of action, the next 10 years, to see how all these things can be actualized towards having a sustainable fisheries management resources. Yeah, so IUU in the basic form, what is IUU? Because we keep saying IUU, IUU, IUU. IUU translates to so many activities, like illegal, let's say, all activities that goes against the required law. For example, just to mention few, you can see from the graph I showed, you can see a lot of activities, fishing on non-permitted species across the EEZ, and even outside the EEZ to some high seas or RFMOs, fishing without license, fishing with false flag and everything. So there are a lot of activities, a lot of things that constitute IUU. And you can see my left picture that illegal fishing is more than a crime against fish. So, and globally, about between 11 to 26 million tons are lost on this. Now, if IUU is curtailed and managed based on the goal according to the UN SDG target, it has the possibility to, for example, limit hunger, to enhance livelihood, and also to conserve ocean resources, because IUU entails fishing target species and also living non-target species, where thereby contributing and promoting the ecosystem, including the food web and the food chain. Now, looking at the certification program. Now, I am bringing the certification program because it has been observed that the states, countries are facing difficulties in effectively managing these marine resources, especially fish. And that is why we have what is called the VSA certification, and which are non-mandatory market-driven tools to address social, environmental, and economic issues. And this ensures having satisfaction and assurance across supply and value chain. You can see examples of prominent certification programs or bodies. You can see the Friend of the Sea, the Marine Stewardship Council, the Natureland, and SAFE. These are bodies that have been working on a non-governmental platform to see how fisheries can be promoted using market-based driven tools. Now, so this tool is not only an isolated tool, it's highly integrated, and you can see, for example, it has relevance with the FAO, and there are guidelines set aside by FAO to manage the fisheries. There's what is called the GSSI, the Global Sustainable Seafood Initiative, to see how these guidelines are monitored and benchmarked across indicators, and following international regulations and references like the ISO, the ICIL, and also not neglecting foreign trade regulations and states and international laws. Now, certification program, as I said, involves ISOs and includes aspects of setting standards and reviewing concurrent reviews and creating objectives called standards. Then these standards are also passed through independent monitoring and accreditation to see how the fisheries can be accredited and verified, and afterwards given the license or certification to giving them the label to be able to sell the fish. And with this, it shows that they comply and they are well acquainted with these standards. Now, so how do we connect IUU through certification? So you can see IUU has the capacity using with certification to combating IUU. Certification has a lot of role to play. For example, you can see this could be done by sending requests and using satellites. Like my previous two presenters have explained the technologies that are required to ensuring EO, Earth observation on the marine resources. So after this, there is what is called adequate inspection, following legalities and following all authorization and rules. For example, e.g. rules of landing, and also ensuring all activities on board follows required standard. And afterwards, we have the aspect of traceability and document system, whereby the stocks after landing are transported either to the market or through other various channels. Now, for VSS to be effective, there is need to have like specific requirement. Number one, the management system, the stock, and the impact of the fisheries on the ecosystem. So all this requires data, and all this data follows patterns of to protect the stocks, to monitor and to control enforcement, and as well to having best scientific standards and evidence to manage the fisheries. Now, there are the known ways of collecting data are through the land reporting, self-reporting, survey logbook. However, there's need to incorporate this with a unique monitoring platform, which is the EO. And why EO is better is because the issues that we have with the conventional data collection has been the cost, the timing, the timing to collect those data, the human resources, and the complex logistics and planning, including bureaucracies to collect this data. That is why aspect of Earth observation is important in managing the fisheries and controlling IUU. Like just a brief statistics on how on seeing why EU is important. You can see like Dr. Kwame mentioned aspect of pirate attacks around the Gulf of Guinea, especially here you can see how this has been affecting fisheries activities around this region. And with Earth observation, it is possible to drastically control this based on my immediate last presenters on how sensors can be used to monitor fishers and vessels when they are under attack or under troubles. And in IUU, with IUU, EU as well has the capacity to also, through IUU, to promote the fisheries, then manage the ecosystem, and also help the people that are associated or depending directly or indirectly on the fish resources. And like based on the example of Ghana that we've mentioned, so we realized, I'm from Nigeria, and I think Nigeria is yet to move with Ghana to really see how some of these things can be ensured, because we realize in certification research that we've done, there's need for to collect adequate data for the fisheries, and especially to manage IUU. And we have seen that IUU is a complex topic and is not a narrow one. So we can see, like a case study in Ghana, we have seen how Ghana has been able to integrate Earth observation and the automatic identification system, the IAS, to see how they can detect their vessels and they can process their data, whereby the users can as well use all these platforms to ensure a proper fisheries management. So a brief case study of our project in Canada and Nigeria. We realized there are issues of IUU in Nigeria, a lot of them. Decline in catches, the pirate attacks, and reduction of fishing vessels. Then in Canada as well, to my right, we worked on contributing to the indigenous communities through promoting the indigenous rights and empowerment. And we realized that all these things cannot be done in isolation. There is need to integrate Earth observation and certification to effectively manage the fisheries and to curb IUU, because IUU, based on statistics, is affecting the fisheries with 30%. So, for example, countries like Nigeria, how can they effectively tap into the opportunities of EU, or I mean of Earth observation? Number one, there are so many oil spill pollution. EU can be used effectively to tackle this, to identify the risk, to control the fisheries, checking fishing effort estimation, and locating fishing patterns. An aspect of safety, because it has been explained in previous presentation that accidents can be monitored and can be cautioned using Earth observation. And lastly, security, using controlling piracy, unflagged vessels, and fishing boundaries and limits. So thank you so much for the support, and thank you for listening. Yeah.
Great, thank you, Issa. That was a really great overview of what IUU fishing is and how we could apply the technologies that we're talking about today through Earth observations to try to tackle them. So now we have about half an hour for our discussion, and feel free to unmute your mic and ask a question for any of our presenters.
Could I ask speakers to put their cameras on, please?
So I have a
Hello?
question.
Okay, good.
Oh, yes, Isa. Did you want to start a discussion?
Yeah, sorry, come again.
Oh, I wasn't sure if you wanted to make a statement.
No, I'm fine. I'm fine.
I think this question is for maybe Kwame and Richard. What are some of the challenges of tracking, I guess, large vessels?
Looks like we have a question in the chat.
Oh, okay.
This is from Manuel. He says, I understand that AIS as well as VMS has an individual code assigned to each ship in particular that identifies it with the flag of a specific country. What happens if a ship changes its flag? Does its AIS change too, or does it keep the same code? And if the code changes, does it occur at the same time as the flag, or does it take longer after the change?
That's a good question. I don't know about VMS devices. Maybe
Richard, it looks like you're talking, but we can't hear you.
Oh,
I can hear him.
Yeah, I'm unmuted.
Yeah, I just want to say that there's a terrible delay between most of what we hear and the host. So just be aware of that. You might need to wait 10 seconds before you hear people.
Thanks, Peter. So from an AIS point of view, yeah, an AIS device, whether it's a Class A on a big commercial ship or a exactEarth transponder, uses what's called an MMSI, which is a unique code. And in fact, any boat with a VHF radio on will have an MMSI allocated to it. And the first 3 digits indicate the flag of the country that the boat is registered to, or who issued that MMSI, let's put it that way. The flag is can be set in the configuration of the device. If a boat changes its MMSI, and this does happen, then it's very difficult for us as the data collector to do anything about it other than to note that there are potentially duplicate MMSIs out there. Particularly, this happens particularly if a boat takes an MMSI that's already being used by another one. And there are companies and services around the world, particularly in the IUU space, who look out for that kind of thing. They look out deliberately for ships breaking the rules. And so Trigmat in Norway, for example, is a good example. But there are lots of organizations, lots of charitable trusts and things that look out for boats that break the rules. But yes, basically, it's very difficult to change the MMSI on a transponder. You have to ask the manufacturer's permission because you have to have an unlock code. But that doesn't mean that it's not possible. And it certainly does happen. Not that frequently, but it does. Yeah. On VMS, I don't know, Kwame, if you know more about how a VMS terminal is configured.
Well, I also don't know much about how VMS is configured, but what I know is the VMS equipment comes with the license. So anytime a fishing vessel goes for a license or is provided a license, it comes with a VMS that it's supposed to be installed on the boat. So most often you would not find some of these VMSs being duplicated most of the time. Yeah, but there's been instances that people spoof them, so it can be done. But out here, I know the Ministry of Fisheries are very particular about what you put on the boat, so they always ensure that the right VMS is used for the right vessel.
Yeah. And where exactTrax is used operationally, it normally uses an MMSI that's being allocated by the government, and then it's monitored. What tends to happen more often than changing the MMSI is that, and this will happen with certain, particularly semi-industrial, industrial fishing vessels, is that they spoof their GPS, which means that they can basically make their boat appear as if it's in some other part of the world. And we do see this occasionally. But because of the satellite works on it's an RF device, it's picking up Doppler information, we can actually work out not absolutely accurately, but pretty accurately where a boat actually is when it transmitted, regardless of whatever position it's transmitting in its AIS message. So that's one way around it. The other thing that they can do, and it's quite common, is they pull the GPS antenna out of the AIS box. This doesn't happen with exactTrax because the GPS is integral to it, but on a bigger ship, and then the AIS device is still working, but it's transmitting a lat long of -181 plus 91, which obviously is an unreal position. And again, we pick those up, but because of the Doppler, we can actually work out roughly where the ship is actually transmitting, despite the fact that it's turned its GPS off. So, I mean, the other way that a lot of fishing vessels do is they go dark. They just turn their entire AIS off, and Kwame will know about that. That's a very common thing. We can tell generally when an AIS device has been switched on and comes back off, switched off and comes back on. Not precisely, but pretty much. So yeah, there's lots of tricks. Some of them can be found out, but yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult. And actually, I should just finish off. A VMS, I mean, VMS is supposed to be tamper-proof. You're not allowed to turn them off. You have to apply for permission to turn off your device if you've got to work on it or whatever. But it's also common practice just to put a bucket over the antenna or something and say, hey, it's not working. And it's very, very hard to prove that, you know, whether that's a lie or true. So VMS, AIS, there are ways of breaking them both, I'm afraid.
Thanks for that. We have a question from Hassan. Kwame, would you mind elaborating on the effectiveness of what is deployed now, such as technology, models, and other things, to fight against IUU fishing in the Gulf? And he also asks, are we actually reducing IUU fishing in the Gulf?
Okay, thank you. So,
sorry, do you mean the Gulf or the Gulf of Guinea?
Hassan, would you like to elaborate?
Yeah, the Gulf of Guinea, of course. The Gulf of Guinea, of course.
Okay, so until recently, one, you couldn't
I thought
monitor.
Kwame now is Gulf. No worries, go ahead, Kwame.
All right. So until recently, we couldn't monitor small boats, right? So 10 years back, the focus was only on bigger vessels. Then we started working with exactEarth, putting Class B transponders on these small boats. So that for me was one of the biggest things that happened to our fight against IUU. Then in the past, most of the countries in the region were not relying much on these technologies. AIS, VNS existed, but it was a bit expensive, so quite a lot of the countries were not using them. But AIS came in, and it was easier for people to pay for the service and use and even work with the data. So that brought a huge opportunity in the fight against IUU. Okay. Now, again, thanks to some of the projects that I'm involved in, especially the MISA and GMES in Africa, countries in the region have come to accept the use of Earth observation technology in the fight against IUU. So in the past, they were more concerned about port state measures, looking at your logbooks, were you doing the right thing, that sort of thing. But now there is enough evidence, and like I had indicated in one of the slides where I showed a video of the Trax, it's easier to compare what is in the books with what do we actually see you do at sea. So these for me are some of the breakthroughs that Earth observations has brought to the fight against IUU, and there's been tremendous improvement. For instance, somewhere last year, a fishing company was fined $1 million in Ghana, right? And they have relied on AIS, VMS, and additional information to say that you have done something in the galaxy. So I mean, the benefits are enormous, and I think over the years we're going to see more use of this technology in the fight against IUU fishing. Thank you.
Yes, from my side, I agree with Kwame that there has been improvements. However, we have seen a lot of progress in Ghana's ways of managing the fisheries and combating IUU. However, other countries in the Gulf of Guinea still need to brace up and to work because this IUU, it's a catastrophe, and it's really affecting the fishery along the region. So there is need for other countries and with so many collaboration and initiatives to really come together and see how this can be at least solved to a larger percent. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So to add to that, we have a question from Jose. They say, thank you to all presenters. Considering the technological advances and tools available today, in your view, which are the remaining and biggest challenges to eradicate IUU fishing?
That's a big question. And Kwame, I'll let Kwame come in, but from my perspective, from what we see and we hear, is that it's fine. And I was just talking about this. You can have VMS, you can have AIS, you can have SAR imagery, but basically, if a ship wants to go dark, then it's perfectly possible, and that happens very frequently. There are particular nations who behave more badly than others when it comes to that. But you can turn off your VMS, you can turn off your AIS. If you're observed by a SAR image, but there's no AIS data or VMS data to identify you, then again, you're just a blob on an Earth observation image. So unfortunately, there are ways around it all if you need to, and if you want to. Need is the wrong word. So I think there are still quite a lot of challenges out there. And Kwame, you deal with this more frequently than I do. What do you think?
Yeah. So one of the challenges, the sort of fishing agreements that we tend to have with other countries. So most often than not, these countries take advantage of the weak enforcement regimes that exist in developing countries. So that is one big challenge. The other challenge is also with our local fishermen, right? It's a two-way thing. Foreign fleets come in to take so much, so they don't have enough to take, right? I mean, the artisanal fisherman doesn't have enough to take. At the same time, he's also working together with the foreign fleet to take bycatch, discatch, and so forth. So it's sort of provides an avenue for the foreign fleet, which has got a lot of power to fish, to take more and to give or sell it back to the artisanal fisherman. So these are some of the problems that we have. So it becomes difficult for you to get the artisanal or the local fisherman to be on your side to fight foreign fleets. So for instance, one of the things we expect them to do is anytime they go out to sea and they see something suspicious, they could probably lock the position and say that we found a vessel here and we think it's involved in IUU fishing. And you expect them to come back and tell us about it, but this doesn't happen. So we tend not to have we are using satellite to track, but it's also good to have information right from the fishing grounds and to say that, yes, these are the things that happen and we are better informed to fight IUU fishing. So these are some of the challenges that I can think of. I don't know if Isa has anything to say.
Yes, looking at the context of IUU, like I mentioned in my presentation, is robust and is a complex topic. So, for example, EO and other technologies will be able to only solve part. However, there is need for social and policy intervention because, for example, the positioning, the location, the traveling might be checked. However, IUU also entails using of illegal gears, bycatch, like Kwame said, discarding, transferring free fish without authorization, and all these things might not be detected through EU alone. So there's need for an integrated approach using IUU and with other tools like we have mentioned, and looking at aspect of the supply chain transparency. And for example, the Abalobi is also another way of tracking the stock, the fish from the ocean down to the consumer. So there's need for social awareness and real policy intervention. Also, partners, collaborators around the RFMOs, because there are a lot of work to be done within the RFMOs. There's need to have a lot of understanding and support within that region. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Isa, and for all the panelists. Along those lines, how could countries leverage the UN Decade of Ocean Science to address some of these challenges?
Yeah, I think the UN Decade of Action, because that action that segment of the SDG requires action, and the of action has talked about, number one, working with local communities. In our presentation, we have mentioned the significance of local communities in reducing the impact of IUU, because we are losing a lot of money from IUU activities in the region. So there's need to engage more of the local people. And how do we do this? They need support, they need orientation, and they need some kind of awareness and orientation, because like Richard mentioned that some of these devices should be able to be they are low cost. However, still small scale fishermen might not have the capacity to use them in terms of education or in terms of cost. So there is need to really support and to invest more on the small scale fishermen, because they occupy larger percent of fishing activities in the region, and they are also victims. They are victims of IUU, because some of the big vessels, they come down to their region, to very close to the coast to fish, which is also a part of IUU, a problem of IUU. So there's need, in my own view, there's need to focus more on local people to give them support so that we can because majority of the EOs and the rest that the EOs have been focused more on the big vessels. So there's need to shift backward and see how we can promote livelihood, because doing this will help the low scale fishermen to enhance their livelihood, their economic benefit, and even provide some of their provide solutions to some of their problems. Yeah. Thank you.
Yeah, and I completely agree with what Isa just said. And Isa mentioned it as well. The Abalobi concept, I'm not saying it's applicable everywhere, but it's an interesting model for trying to empower small-scale fishermen through the growing interest in traceability at the consumer level, at the food processing level, at the supermarket level, to try and give them a desire or a benefit from operating in a way that does support seafood traceability. But it's tricky, yeah, and I agree that a lot of it's concentration at the moment. I mean, VMS is mandated only on big trawlers. Some countries are trying to use things like AIS and exactEarth and all that stuff to try and bring the smaller fleets in. But the business model is tricky. There is a cost in buying a device, whether it's a VMS device or an AIS device, whatever it is. And as Isa said, it's tricky, or Kwame said, that's not easily affordable, however cheap it is by some communities. So yeah, a lot of stakeholders are going to need to be involved, I think, to try and roll it out.
This is Emily. I have a question. How durable is the technology? Does it for the AIS trackers? Does it need a lot of maintenance?
No, it's a good question, Emily. No, they're all designed to last several years without any change or requirement to sort of play with them or anything. We've got one in Mauritania that's been there 3 years on 24/7 for 3 years, and it's operating just as well now as it did when we first put it up. So no, it's designed to be durable, designed to be on small boats out at sea, and yeah, generally all of the different manufacturers that make them produce very, very good equipment, easy to deploy and very, very low maintenance.
Great, thank you. So let's see, Hassan has a question. Kwame or Isa, do you know if anyone in the Gulf of Guinea countries are using FAO global record to fight IUU fishing?
I would say yes, but I know my Ministry of Fisheries use a lot of rely on a lot of report and intelligence from other agencies to manage IUU fishing. Directly, I'm not involved in that, and I haven't been using any of those form of information. But I'm certain they might be using something of that sort or something similar in the fight against IUU fishing.
Yeah, from my end, I know that there is some agreement between the Nigerian Fishery Department and FAO in terms of fighting IUU and using their data and giving them support. However, effectiveness is the key. So there is need for the fisheries managers to brace up and to work more on harnessing all this support. I know support comes from, for example, the FAO and other means, but actualizing them, because there are differences between giving support and rendering assistance, but actualizing is the key, is a problem. I can only say of Nigeria, but I want to say that there is more on effectiveness, and there is need for them to do more to fight IUU there. Thank you, Hassan.
But let me add something. So apart from that, there are other agencies or initiatives or international bodies also working a lot out here. For instance, I know Sea Shepherd has been working with I think either Liberia or Sierra Leone consistently to police their waters. There's also cross-country collaboration. For instance, Ghana collaborates a lot with Cote d'Ivoire and other neighboring countries to fight IUU. So it's not like every country is working alone. There are regional bodies also working together. So there is a lot of international collaboration and other national engagements to curb IUU fishing.
Hey, Kwame, you showed one of your figures showed a vessel coming from all the way from Europe, going down to the Canary, between Canary Islands and Morocco, and then it ended up in Liberia, and then in Gulf of Guinea. I mean, usually those AU fishing vessels are usually they don't use any. I mean, they turn off everything. How you guys were able to detect that one?
So that was AIS. So okay, let me give you the background story. So until 2015 thereabout, most countries in the region were not using AIS in IUU fight, right, or in monitoring vessels. So we started using that through the MISA project when we started talking to exactEarth, and they provided that service. So I'm certain that vessel didn't know at that time that the capacity existed in West Africa to track boats with AIS. I have that feeling, yes. So yeah, that allowed us to track it. yeah.
I think the other thing is that I mean, if they're over 300 tons, they have to have AIS on now. That doesn't mean that they keep it on, but they will, because if they're detected not having AIS on, particularly as they're into territorial waters or approaching ports or whatever, then they get into trouble that way, regardless of whether they're fishing or not, because it's international law. They must have an AIS on. And you know, it is a collision avoidance system, so turning it off is actually quite dangerous for the boat, especially if it's operating at night or the weather's bad. So sometimes they keep it on, even though they probably know that they're being watched, but a lot of the time they will turn it off.
I have a question for everyone. Isa had talked about the importance of local engagement, and Kwame, you talked about collaborations between regions. Do you have examples of region-specific challenges of adopting this technology?
Yes, for me, and this is very relevant in West Africa. The issue, one of the main challenges, capacity to utilize this technology. So in our engagement with countries in the region, we provide a platform for them to be able to understand the benefits, understand the sort of information that these technology provide, and how to even analyze data sets. So that is one challenge. In the past, for instance, you couldn't even lay hands on software that could allow you to process satellite images. But currently, thanks to certain projects and certain institutions like Joint Research Center, PML, ESA, and so forth, there are softwares or applications that can allow you to visualize, process, and use this technology. So that for me is one of the main challenges that face countries in their quest to use satellite tools for managing resources.
And from my, I'm not an expert here, but it's been touched on by both Kwame and Isa. There are regional coordination centres. There's a couple in West Africa that we know about, but they tend to concentrate on the bigger ships, and they tend to be ships that can carry VMS, and including those smaller vessels. And we're not necessarily talking all the way down to artisanal, but it could be the semi-industrial fleet, which Ghana did very well a couple of years ago, would make a big difference as well, because they all contribute to the problem potentially.
Yeah, I also recognize so many regional programs. However, charity begins at home, so there is need for more activity to engage the local people within the states and within the local inland fishery zones. So this should be enhanced and should be worked upon. But I know that there are so many regional initiatives, but effectiveness, as I have mentioned, is the key. And we hope so that the states are trying their best, and the regional, I think the FCWC, they are doing a lot of programs in the region. But we hope to see more clear success indicators in the nearest future.
Thank you. I have a question from, let's see, Ibrahim. In exploring the ocean for new drug developments, what role does FAO and other organizations play to avoid overexploitation of marine resources? So how are these technologies integrated or used for monitoring and resource management?
I think the context where Ibrahim is asking the question is from maybe mining minerals or mining important resources from the ocean, from the ocean, or probably exploring the deep sea resource. I don't know, but I know international seabed stuff, and I think they are working with countries in the region. I know of Nigeria signing agreement with is that ISABED or something like that, IS something, on harnessing these opportunities in together with FAO, but I cannot say much on this.
Yeah, thank you for that. One last question from Hassan. Richard, you mentioned estimating catch or improving catch data using exactAIS tech. Could you elaborate on that? In South Africa and other parts of the world, there is a challenge to estimate octopus catch. How could we improve the catch estimate from your point of view?
That's a good question, Hassan, and unfortunately I'm not the expert here. Our catch reporting initiatives at the moment are in conjunction with Abalobi. And if you know Abalobi, they're best placed to answer this. If you don't, I would happily introduce you. They are working currently in South Africa. I believe they have intention to work in Madagascar related to octopus, and the Comores, and they're doing something in the Seychelles as well. So we're just we're the sort of tech part of it, but those guys are the experts, and yeah, I think you should really talk to them. So sorry to kind of dodge your question. It's just you're probably better to get it from the horse's mouth than me. So I very happily make an introduction if you don't know these guys.
Great, thank you. And it looks like we're out of time. So I want to say many thanks to our panelists today. I think it's been great to see the different uses of Earth observation data to track IUU fishing. So let's see. Yes, So this presentation is recorded and it will be on the website by next week, along with our other presentations. So again, thank you very much to Kwame, Richard, and Isa for sharing your work. We have Hassan putting his email in the chat. So yeah, if you'd like to learn more about any of this work, please reach out to our presenters. And hopefully we see you on Tuesday, December 15th for our last session on EO for habitat mapping. So thank you everyone for joining.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Bye.
Bye-bye.